and also throwing the light on data lake overview. So since you will be taking ahead it with Abhay Goyal, let me quickly introduce him to you all. So Abhay is an enterprise and data architect with over 1.5 decade of leadership experience in designing innovative business solutions, complex problem solving, platform curation and creation. Abhay is a discoverer who always liked to dig deeper and extract insights. So one of his favorite outcome is about himself, where he learned that he is a lazy lad. That's why he became an engineer to solve things with automation. And here he is working as a manager of software engineering. So over to you, Abhay.
Thank you, Shilpi, for the wonderful introduction. And before I begin, I think Shilpi, do you want to take one question? I think we have from audience. Maybe if one more we can take if we have, but maybe I can quote the question for you and you can answer that. And the audience want to know, like, any example of batch data and the real time data. Any example if you want to quote.
Sure. Thank you so much, Abhay. So, guys, though Saurabh has already answered that, but I'll still take it up with an example. Batch data is something that comes at a frequency. It's not it's not coming in at every moment. So it comes at a frequency, like a day and job running and curating all, compiling all the transactions that has happened into in a bank. Have you ever noticed you have a credit card transaction and there's some error, the amount got deducted, but it did not get paid. The transaction is actually reversed after 24 hours. That's what bank generally comments. Now, what is the reason for reversal after 24 hours? Because the consolidation happens after the at the end of the day. It's a batch cycle. It's a batch job that runs at the end of the day that takes care of all these transactions and the mismatches, and it is corrected. So that's an example of batch data where it runs periodically and it comes as a burst after a certain period. It could be hourly, it could be daily, it could be weekly, it could be monthly, depending upon the use cases. Real-time data is something that keeps on coming in as a continuous stream, continuous events. All your social media data, your Facebooks, your Twitters, your IoT data, the sensors are very chatty devices. So all this data that keeps on continuously coming in as a stream, as a never unbounded, never ending stream of data. And the treatment of these two data sets is very different in terms of the solutioning that you do. The batch, I can take care of it at the end of the day. A job runs for a couple of hours. If the data is arriving once in 24 hours, a job running for 2 hours is also fine. That will catch up. But if the data is arriving as multiple events or thousands of events per second, at a per second TPS, uh, the job has to be proficient enough and performant enough to take care of it, to build there is no lag. So quick example about real time is the moment you cross the state borders, you get an SMS by your uh, uh, mobile service provider that welcomes to so and so zone. So how that has happened? That's they're tracking you in real time, and then there is an alert generated the moment you cross the state border. I hope that answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpi. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. Can we move on to the next slide? And thanks, Shilpi, for the wonderful introduction about mine. Okay, so I feel like, now I'm looking like these minions actually, because we already talked about, I think Shilpi has very well described, the power of data and also like, walk us through the high level architecture. But I feel like, like the similar to these minions, like, I know the power of data, but from where I can get the data, right? Even if I got the data, how can I understand? Well, data could be a variety of data. It could be unstructured, and we'll talk about it. Like, that, it could be image files, it could be audio files. How would I understand it actually? Or how would my system will understand it if I say so, right? We'll also talk about like, how can I use that data? So I got the data. Okay. Maybe, I'm able to understand some images and some audios, but what is the use of that data, right? So let me begin with this, like, more in a technical side where, we'll talk about these aspects in technical terms. How can we get the data? How can we process the data? And how can we churn the data for the usage perspective? Can you move on, please? Yep, thank you. So before even jumping on to that solutions, let's talk about what is really a big data is. And guys, please feel free to post your questions. Don't hold yourself. keep posting, and we would love to answer those questions, and either in the chat section itself, or we would like to take it up on online as well. As I mentioned, what is really a big data and its challenges, right? So let's talk about that. Big data is a term that describes large volume of data. When we say large volume of data, that could concise with a structured and unstructured. So the difference between structured and structured is if I talk about structured, in any organization, we have HR data, we have employees data, which is residing in relational databases, more tabular format, I would say so, right? Which is having a very well-defined schema that, okay, employee name, employee ID, employee salary, employee location, right? So this is more like a structured data. But when I say unstructured data could be your tweets could be unstructured data, your image files could be unstructured data. We used to do a lot of calling, the call records are unstructured data, right? So we need to understand the big data always comprises with both kind of data, and both kind of data can be helpful for getting out the insight. So that is why we cannot leave one or another, right? So as I said, big data is a term for describing large amount of data, concising with a structure and structure, and that updates the business on day-to-day basis, right? So this is definitely not amount of data, and we will see why we are saying emphasizing it should not be amount of data, because many times we believe that big data means lots of data, but really not true. I mean, sometimes lots of data can also lead you to the different issues that we'll see in subsequent slides, why it is so. But what are the challenges with big data? So let me, focus on those 5 V's of the data, starting with velocity. As we mentioned, that real-time data, the speed at which the data is keep coming. I mean, every second on social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, we generate terabytes of data every second. I mean, worldwide. So imagine, at this speed of data is keep coming, we really need a system, or we really need a challenge how to process that data in such a real time zone, right? So velocity is one of the big challenge, we have to solve whenever we are designing our system. The second aspect is volume. The data is keep coming, and it's always coming. I mean, forever and ever, right? So we have a storage problem. Where would I store? I may have in laptop maybe 100 GB of hard disk, right? But tomorrow if I have a 200 GB of data, where would I store it, right? So that's another problem, is how to store it. That's a volume issue, and we'll talk about each and every solution. I'm just talking about the challenges right now. The third aspect is variety of the data. As I said, we can have a structured data, we can have unstructured data, we can have semi-structured, quasi-structured data, like tweets, images, videos, audios, variety of data, right? So how would I process? How can I build a pipeline which can understand any kind of data and extract the insight out of it? Because we need a unified layer. Otherwise, I may end up writing tens of, maybe hundreds of jobs or hundreds of systems I'll build in my organization where everyone is, processing their own data. We don't need it, right? We need a unified layer. So that's another problem of handling the variety of data. Veracity is more like, that reliability and the trustworthy of data. I mean, and it is really important actually. If data is not trustworthy, you cannot, your models, if you're building an AI model, maybe that could be biased. Let me quote one example here, one of the survey I was reading, that one of the survey has done on women's, women's occupation, that what occupation women will choose. So what happened, when they collected the data, the organization collected the data, they built a very fancy AI model. And whenever, you ask from that model, then 80–90% time that model was always predicting that women are housemakers. Then, even if, you're doing a survey on in, urban areas or in very modern cities, but every time it was predicted as a housemaker. The reason being is the data was not reliable, not trustworthy, not it is biased, because the majority of the data was collected from the Asian rural areas. So due to which a model was also biased. So we can always lead into such situations, right? I mean, that is why it is important to have the real value of the data, the veracity of the data. So that's another challenge which we have to solve with building this data management systems. The fifth quadrant is value of the data. How to access the big data, it's well and good, right? So whether the data is really useful for me or not. Sometimes what happens, time is money, right? So maybe the time when the data was supposed to be used, we have not used it, but now it is of no use. I really don't want to see the 3 years back data, right? So it is important to know, I should always keep with me only the value of data, which data can have some value. So we'll talk about all these challenges and how to solve in further slides. Can you move on, please? Okay, so let's talk about what is data lake. So all these challenges what we talked about, the solution could be data lake, data warehouse, and we'll focus more on the data lake. But data lake is a newer concept, but at the same time can solve a lot of problems as a unified layer. So I mean, looking at the picture, you might see what are we in a technical session or in somewhere else? But I just want to talk about in more layman language, want to figure it out, how the data lake look like. Data lake is very much, similar concept can be compared to the water lake, like, where water flows in, filling up the reservoir and flows out, right? Like you can see the water is coming from, from clouds, water is coming from mountains. There are lots of streams that keep coming and joining together in one ground, one lake. So this is a very similar concept what data lake is. Can you move on, please? Okay, so let's talk about the technical aspect of the data lake. A data lake is a scalable, secure. Scalable, that means we should be able to store any amount of data. We should be able to process any amount of data, because as I said, volume and veracity, sorry, volume and speed could be the issue. At the same time, secure, because security, we cannot compromise with the security, and we will learn in one of the session, in subsequent session in data governance security, why security is so much important. So that is why we have to emphasize it should be a scalable, secure data platform that allows enterprise to ingest, so that I can ingest any kind of data like semi-structure, structure, unstructured, store, process means it could be batch streaming, right? And analyze any type of or volume of the information, right? So any type of volume information, it could be hexabyte, petabyte of data, or it could be structure, semi-structure, unstructured, the data lake should be a unified layer which can store any kind of data and process any kind of data. Okay, so let's talk about so this is a layered architecture of data lake. I mean, and I'll talk about briefly touch upon each and every component, but we still have a detailed session on each and every layer in subsequent hours. So from left to right, if I go on data sources, right? So in data lake, as I said, it could be variety of data. It could be any kind of data or any volume of data which is coming in. So it could be unstructured data, it could be log files, it could be data coming from your transactional data, which is coming from relational databases. It is coming from data marts, right? It can be a streaming data which is coming into your organization. And then what happens, in between the center layer is the complete data lake structure, where if I go from bottom to top, so we have a data storage layer where we want to store the data. Storage layer could be HDFS, could be on cloud. If I talk about S3, GCS, right? These kind of storage layer we can use. Then on top of it, it is important to have a governance and security, because no governance, that means the governance security basically tells you how to store the data, how to process the data, how to maintain the quality of the data, what are the policies we should be follow based on government policies or country policies or security policies. So governance security is really important aspect where it can actually help me in designing the system where I can have the best quality of data into my system without breaching any privacy and security issues. So this is important rule, and we'll have a complete session on that. We'll talk about it. Then on top of it, we have a layer of data cataloging, discovery, and audit. Right? Again, I can have a petabyte of data. I can have a hexabyte of data. But how would I find the data? So it is really important to catalog and keep tag your data so that data is discoverable. I can anytime go and search the data. Because every time I'm not going to scan the complete hexabyte of data, right? It is not possible, and even if it is possible, it is a time-consuming thing. So it is important to tag your data, keep your metadata, right, and create a catalog so that similar to dictionaries, right? Dictionaries have a catalog, and I want to find any word, so I will, rather than directly jumping on the words and searching each and every word in dictionary, I will directly jump onto that letter or that page and we'll see the so similar concept is there in the data lake, where we can have a cataloging and discovery mechanism and the auditing mechanism. Again, we will have a another session which will talk about more detail what tools and technologies we should be using, right? Then on top of it, we have a processing layer. Processing layer could be SQL layer, NoSQL layer. We can have Spark engines. We can have Presto. We can have so many tools and technology which can help me processing either the extract and load, ETL or ELT process. And we'll talk about these three things, the difference between these three in the next session only. And then on top of it, we should have to have a workflow management. Why? Because we are doing lots of processing, we are doing cataloging, we are applying security, but in order to run everything in one go, we need to have a one orchestration layer which can orchestrate all the steps, properly. So we definitely need a workflow management system on top of it. And on the right side, if I talk about, we have a data as service site layer, which is nothing but how to access your data, because you have curated your data, you have processed your data. Now you have to expose it to the outer world. So there could be many options. Data as service, you can have MQQs, you can have caching layer, you can have JDBC layer, HTTP connector, SQL, batch, streaming API, and your consumption is consumer layer like real-time users, analytical users, BI reporting, programmatic users. They all can access your data based on insight layer, right? Can we move on, please? So there is a one question, does this concept of data also apply to rendering, graphics, designing, and 3D modeling? Yes, of course. So I think Kshetrish has a question that does this concept of data also applies rendering, graphics, designing, and 3D modeling? See, we are talking about data lake as a unified layer. We are storing all the data, processing the data. But data can be used for many purposes, as you mentioned, design, graphic designing, 3D modeling, right? But in order to use that data, you definitely need refined, unless you already have a refined data, right? But most of the cases, we never get directly the refined data. Or even if we are getting, someone is doing that job for us, like, they're building a data solution, refining the data for you and giving it to you. So definitely, to answer your question, we have to have all these steps in order to use that data for multiple purposes, even though it's a modeling or designing. I hope that answers the question, Kshetrish. Okay, so let's talk about steps of building data lake. So again, if I go left to right, and so how data lake, basically here in this slide, I'm going to talk about how data is moving from one layer to another. Because data lake can itself is having multiple layers, and how the data is being curated throughout those layers. So from left, if I'm getting the data like streaming, file data, relational data, batch data, it is moving into the transient zone. Transient zone is something which is not secure, just a vague data. I mean, anything, whatever is coming, I'm putting it into the transient zone, and that is where I will start processing it. Like processing, like I will start cataloging or tagging it, and then I'll process and further move it to the raw zone. In raw zone, I'm going to apply some metadata, protect the sensitive information, like I either provide applying encryption or providing the hashing algorithms, and then the data. So from raw zone is something from where you can consume the data. Users can start consuming the data, because now my data is secure and also tagged. Majorly, like I've seen the raw zones is major consumers are AI and ML models or analytical users who directly jump onto the raw zone and use all the data for their own analysis, because they want to extract their own insight rather than relying on the curated data. So raw zone is the layer, like where lots of algorithms start consuming the data. But in order to use for reporting, alerting, you still need a refined data. So what we do, we move this data, further process, apply a quality and validation rules, and move it to trusted zone. From trusted zone, we enrich the data. When I'm saying enrich this data, that means we are actually applying some schema, right? And enrich the data, either move into a data warehouse or data mart, or maybe sitting in data lake itself, and it is ready to consume by BI tools, for reporting tools, for alerting systems. So these are the different zones of data lake where data is moving from one zone to another. But starting from raw zone, you can start consuming your data. Can we move on, please? Yes. Okay, so we talked about the data lake concept. We talked about the data lake, how we can move data from one layer to another. Now the one of the myths which can come in mind, and this, I mean, even from many industries when I talk, and many of VPs in organization when I discuss, I mean, there's something which is still lying within them. Like if I already have a data warehouse, why do I need a data lake? But data warehouse is a very pretty old concept since mainframe systems, and industry is already using that concept. So they believe, like why do we need it? Why do we need a data lake? We have already invested too much money and time, or vice versa also. Sometimes they feel like if I'm building a data lake, investing it, I should completely get rid of the data warehouse. So let's talk about, can you move on, please? Let's talk about the difference between these two and understand the usage of it and why they both are required together. I mean, why one cannot be a substitute of another, I would say so. So again, I have draw a picture of lake and a water bottle so that we can understand really the difference between a lake and warehouse. Rather jumping on the technical solution, let me try to depict this picture. On the left side, you can see a beautiful lake having a boat and a very beautiful scenery. And on the right side, you can see a water bottle. I'm sorry to not removing the name of that bottle. I'm not promoter of any brand, but I can see a water bottle. I mean, drinking water. You can consider it, right? So if I see data lake, it's a lake where I can swim, I can do boating, I can do kayak, I can drink this water, right? Because if it is refined water, of course. So I can do many things, in the lake. But at the same time, when I see a water within the water, I will always feel like it's for drinking, right? Because it's for one purpose, not multiple purpose. Why is lake data while water lakes are for multiple purposes, right? So that's the exact difference between lake and warehouse. Like warehouse meant to be a for a very focused purpose, while data lakes are maintained for the many purposes, many kind of users, many kind of data could be sitting there, many kind of users can be enjoying within that data lake. Can you move on, please? Yeah, so data lake versus data, this is more a technical aspect. On the right side, I have a picture of data lake. On the left side, I have a picture of data warehouse. So if you see the right side, here I'm going from right to left. On the right side, what I can see, we are pushing all the data. It could be raw data, it could be unstructured data, it could be structured data, pushing into the lake, and you can see it's very unorganized data, right? I mean, definitely we have a curating layer, we have a transit layer, which we talked about, but as a concept in data lake, I'm pushing all the data, right? And then my users can select the data, filter the data, and use the data, right? While on the contrary, in warehouse, if you go on the left side of the picture, you can see the data is processed and organized into a single schema. This is very important term, the single schema. In warehouse, it is more like a relational database where your data has to have associated with some schema, right? Even though the concept of schema evolution where you can have different kind of things, but it has to bound some schema, right? Where pushing the data so that it's more organized, and majorly the data warehouse consumers are reporting tools, BI tools, or could be used for alerting. So it's more clean data, right? And one of the consumer of data lake could be warehouse itself. I mean, you may or may not require, but one of the consumer could be warehouse where I'm curating my data in data lake and pushing into the warehouse so that users can directly consume from warehouse. So a data lake can have a terabytes of data while warehouse can have a 100 GBs or few TBs of data. I mean, and that is how we can achieve the performance also. Let me take another question. In data lake, are we maintaining history of data? In that case, will it not make more complex and burden to retrieve the data? Yes, Vivek. I mean, I agree with your question, and that is where I talked about the tagging of data, data cataloging concept, and we will learn the data cataloging. We have a complete section of data cataloging in subsequent sessions. Where one of my co-speaker will talk about, if we have lots of data, how would I find it? How would I retrieve it? So that is where the cataloging and tagging will come in place, where I can discover my data based on my need and easily get the data. Okay, so I'm not completely answering your question. I know, but in one of the co-speaker is going to talk about in detail how to catalog your data, how to tag your data, and how to use it. Okay, but just to tell you the terms, data cataloging and tagging can help you in retrieving the data. Can we move on, please? Sure, thank you. So this is another myth, that as you also mentioned, right? I mean, Vivek, your question seems to be something which I'm going to talk about, but not completely. But that data lake, I can dump any kind of data in data lake, right? I mean, since I'm already building a data lake, I'm investing so much money. Why don't I, use it for pushing all the data? So can we move on? Which is not true actually. So we'll see why. According to a Gartner report, 80% of the existing data lakes will become inefficient. Why? Because of some anti-patterns. So we'll talk about why Gartner is claiming that 80% of the existing data lakes will become inefficient. Can you move on, please? Okay, so some of the anti-patterns which we should know before even jumping on building the data lake. Otherwise, we may end up creating a swamp rather than lake. I mean, swamp is also a lake similar to lake, store the data, but more unorganized data, while lake is having a more organized data, right? So there are few anti-patterns. Let me quickly talk about it, like data without purpose. If I keep bringing the data even if it is of no use. You remember I talked to the value of data. So if I'm not keeping the data which is having a value and I'm keeping everything, eventually I will not be able to search that data, or it would be very difficult for me to retrieve the data. No metadata. I'm not tagging the data, like as Vivek also mentioned that if I'm not tagging the data, my data will not be discoverable. So it would be very hard for me to retrieve the data. This is another anti-pattern, right? Missing data quality, right? I mean, so data quality aspect we will run in governance also. Like if as I mentioned, one of the example with women's occupation, if my data is biased or not having the right quality, my models or my models will also resultant into the unbiased outcomes, right? The last and not least, but the no data governance. As I said, data governance, tell us how to keep my data, how to curate my data, how to store my data, how to secure my data. There's a lot of things data governance talks about, and we will learn in subsequent sessions. If we are not following right data governance strategies, then we again end up having a data swamp, right? So all above science turns into the swamp. So this is again a pictorial view of swamp versus lake. I'm sure on the everybody likes the right side of the picture, which is a beautiful lake, and we have beautiful trees. On the other side, on the right side, we have a swamp. So you can see both have a trees, both have a water, but which one you want to choose? Of course, we want to choose right side of the picture, right? Because data swamp is also having a data, but very unorganized. You may not like it, you may not retrieve it. Then what is the use of it, right? So we should be avoiding following any entry patterns. Can you move on, please? Okay. Let's talk about the strategy to build data lake. Since we talked about anti-pattern, so definitely that means there should be a strategy which I should follow so that I don't end up creating a swamp, right? So it is important to know the, and all, and any company and any organization, your technology leaders and the business leaders should sit together and talk about this strategy. I mean, even your technology leader cannot solve this alone. At the same time, your business leaders cannot solve it alone, because you need to have the information of business as well as technical technology. So they both sit together and understand the strategy. You should know your data. You should know what kind of data I want to use, what kind of data I'm going to bring in, what kind of use cases I want to impact, right? To identify the strengths and weaknesses. A SWOT analysis can help you understand what kind of strengths and weaknesses we have, and we have to live with it, right? Analyze user impact. Like as I said, we know our data. At the same time, we should also understand who is going to consume our data. What are the impacts on that user? Architectural consideration. As Shilpi has talked about the architecture, right? Technical view of the data lake, where we have plenty of technologies, right? So it is important to understand what is right for us, because we may choose everything. I can choose Spark as an execution engine. I can use MapReduce as an execution engine, Hive, Presto, or if I talk about cloud solution, Dataflow, Dataproc. If I talk about Amazon, I can use EMR, I can use Redshift, right? So many technologies. But it is important to understand at an architectural level what is suited for me, right? And last not least, cloud provider selection. If I'm going on cloud, then it is important to understand how, what cloud I want to choose. And then we'll talk about separately in one slide, the cloud strategy and how to choose the cloud vendors, right? So these are strategies to build a data lake. Can you move on, please? Okay, so we already talked about the data lake concept. We already talked about the power of data. We already know the strategy to build a data lake. But whatever we talked about majorly on-prem solutions, right? But do you really think building a data lake can take months and need deep pockets? Why? Because we talked about lots of technologies. So if I wanna build my data lake on-prem, I need to purchase hardware. I need to purchase software licenses. I need to sit together with my business leaders and technology leaders to build the data lake, strategize it, which can take months, and to strategize it, which can take months to purchase and procure the hardware, and definitely require a lot of money. In order to solve that, cloud is the key. Can you move on, please? Yeah, so cloud can be a very effective solution if we don't want to spend too much money, we don't want to spend too much time. So cloud could be the quickest way of building my data lake. Why? Let's talk about it. Cloud is the key. As I said, building data lake on cloud is quick and easy to manage. I mean, I can just maybe if I'm using AWS, spinning up a Hadoop cluster, EMR cluster can take few seconds or few minutes, and I can bring my data on S3 and I can directly see the insights. It can hardly take more than 30 minutes. While on-prem, I need to purchase everything, install it, and which can take few days, right? So it is so easy in cloud, like bringing a data lake. Another advantage is moving data storage to cloud has become feasible for all companies and all sizes. I know if I'm uploading the data on S3 in few bytes or few megabytes, it's easy I can just upload it on internet. But companies very big companies, right? I mean like financial companies, telecom companies, they already have lots of data. Like they have already on-prem solutions, they have exabyte of data so how and if they start uploading it on internet, that could take ages. But now cloud companies come up with a solution like Snowmobile, Snow Trucks. They just send you the truck and you can upload the data into the truck. Literally, I mean it's a truck actually, and you can upload it to a truck. Truck will ship, go back to their data center, plug it in the data center and upload the data, and that the job which was supposed to be done in months now can be done in a day or two. So it's very easy nowadays to use the cloud and moving your data. Scaling and centralized functionality, I mean that is a known key feature for cloud. You can scale any, either for storage or computation. You can spin up any machines, you can spin up any storage, and it's all centralized and very easy to manage. You can log into the cloud services and manage it. Immediate data-driven insight, as I said, spin up a cluster can take hardly half an hour, and you can immediately push your data and start extracting the insights, right? At least even though if you are do some POC, so it's so easy to use it. Can you move on? Okay, effective data migration model and strategy. As I said, I mean, on-prem solution can take months and can, have a deep, I may require a lot of money, right, to expense. But it is important to understand if I'm going on cloud, what are the migration models? What are the strategies? I know one of the company, whose yearly expenditure is $300 million on cloud. So it's too much, right? I mean, I could have, in $3 million, I could have spin up my own on-prem cluster. The reason being is if they don't follow the right model, right strategy. It is important to understand if we are going on cloud, if you're not following right model, right strategy, we may end up investing more money and more time as compared to on-prem solution. So it is really important to understand. Let's talk about the migration models. There are three major models, which companies follow. One is that forklift, which is nothing but a lift shift approach, where, from left to right, I'm going that lift and shift approach, where, I can simply, if I have a on-prem solution, like, maybe Hadoop cluster, what I'll do, I'll have a infrastructure as service on cloud, spin up my own Hadoop cluster and just, keep working on it. So it's very simple to migrate because I know already my Hadoop expertise and I already have a team, so it's less dev effort. I'll use my existing team to build that cluster and start using it. That's the one approach. Second approach could be Hadoop AAS, which is means that using a managed services on cloud. Your cloud offer a lot of things, like AWS offers Redshift as a data warehouse solution, S3 as a storage managed service, EMR clusters, right? If I talk about GCP, Google Cloud Platform, so they offer Dataproc, data flow uh, uh, as a processing layer, right? Or Bigtable as a storage layer, or BigQuery as a data warehouse solution. So the second strategy could be I directly have an on-prem solution, but rather than shifting it as it is, I'll start you consuming the managed services. But that is more complex because I need to redesign my whole system, right? Whatever applications were running on-prem, I have to redesign the system to make it cloud native, right? Definitely require a lot of dev effort. The third strategy could be hybrid approach, where and this is a strategy which I have seen organizations are mostly follow because this is a more easier, better approach. What that I can go on-prem and cloud together, where I can move some of the services on cloud native, like maybe I can start using storage layer, right, or maybe some execution engine, but not 100%. So I'll gradually do the transition, and till the time I'm transitioning the system, I'll keep both the systems like on-prem and cloud, and we'll use both together. So this is the third approach which mostly companies are following and would recommend, mostly. There's some strategies. So these are the models which we need to choose before even jumping onto the cloud. There's some strategy we need to follow before direct. So we should not directly jump into the cloud and take everything, right? There are certain steps we need to follow. First, we should do the cloud migration objective assessment. Like, that, okay, what is my infrastructure, current infrastructure in on-prem? What is the data sources I have? What are the use cases I want to bring into the cloud? We should do that as an assessment. Second step could be the POC on subset of data. Rather than jumping complete solution, I should do POCs with different cloud vendors to understand what are the solutions I can use, because every cloud vendor is offering lots of services. Like Amazon is having more than 10,000 services. Right? Similarly, GCP and Azure is also having lots of services. So we should know what kind of services I want to choose. So we should do the POCs on that. Then once we have the POC, then we should, and we have decided the cloud vendor and the services, then we should productionize our build. The third step, the production build. And then fourth step is after production, we should also talk about how to, automate all these systems rather than doing a manual, because cloud is known for automation. So we should go for that. Can we move on, please? Okay, these are a few of the major cloud vendors like Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud. Definitely there are many more like Alibaba, Databricks, and IBM Cloud Prep, but these are the major vendors which majorly industries are going for. Can you move on, please? Okay, we talked about the good side of data. We talked about the data lake solution. We talked about a lot of the goody part. Let me touch base upon dark side of the data management system. It is important to know the dark side, along with the positive sides. And we again have a complete session on data governance security. We'll talk about more on the dark side, and we'll also talk about the solutions of the dark side. So I'm not going to talk about solutions, but I'll touch base upon the dark side of the data. Data security. We are living in an internet era, right? So, and we do payment transactions, we do lots of activities on social media sites. So what we do, we leave lots of traces on the internet. And as and when we spend more and more time on internet, there is always risk to leave those traces, and someone can hack those traces and can get to know about me. So that's a data security risk. Data privacy. Privacy is like, that we are using lots of IoT devices. So we are, companies are collecting lots of my personal data, like smartwatches I'm wearing. So it is collecting me how many walks I've done, what I'm eating. I'm having smart machines, smart cars, right? Where I'm going, it is tracking. So lots of smart devices we are living with, right? Alexa is one of the example. So that organization are collecting lots of, our personal data, and that can lead to my privacy issues, right? That data quality. I took one example of like women's occupation, so I'm not gonna quote any other example, but this is the same example. If my data is not quality, then my bad data can result to the bad outcome, unbiased outcome, right? Or could be a sometimes we have seen some of the models for gender biased, right? So definitely we need to be very much sure like that we are having the right data quality in system. Can you move on, please? Okay, so as I said, like that dark side of data, big data and predictive analytics can tell you frightening, accurate stories. They're not wrong, but they are frightening. Let me tell you one story. Can you move on, please? I'm gonna end my session with this last story. There is a Target. Target is a retail store in US actually. It's a very big giant store. And what they did, they start collecting the data, understanding the shopping behaviors and predict. And their models were used to predict a lot of things. And based on the shopping behavior, they predicted one of the teen girl was pregnant before her father knew. And that was a privacy breach because the father when got to know from Target offers, because Target started offering her like baby products, lots of other things, what pregnant ladies need. And when father got to know, he had a big fight with Target, and then eventually know that the girl was really pregnant. So the Target realized actually we should not get into the privacy of the folks actually, and that is where all GDPR policies and governance policies comes in play, which can help us in avoiding these kind of situations, right? Okay, so this is where I want to end up my sessions, and I can take one or two questions if we have. Uh, Otherwise, I'll hand over to Survi.
Sure. Thank you, Abhay, and thank you, Shilpi, for sharing such insights, for sharing great insights about the data lake. Since we have a lot of questions on the board, so just to make the folks aware that our SMEs are taking it one-on-one basis with you all, and you feel free to post your questions in the Q&A section, and the relevant one can be picked up by the speakers during the session.